Hey everyone, good evening. I'm here with Thunderous, and our topic today is atheism. So today, this is more of Thunderous's talk. When I first really met him, he was someone who was very clued up on atheism. I heard him speak on Thaddeus's channel, and I was very, very impressed. So I thought I would be happy to have him talk on the topic. And Thunderous, how are you doing?
Hi everybody. Hi, how's yourself, Lloyd? I know you've been a very busy man. We're working with other channels, which is good to see. So how are you? You must be very flat out and tired by now.
Actually, I am. It's been a very busy time. Just so everyone knows, let me actually just skip over. Let me just move over here. Yeah, I've actually started. I have extensive notes. I haven't finished them all, but I have started today. But I will be talking about Darwin and the Third Reich in the near future. So I've had these notes for some time, and I'm just busy prepping to talk about Darwinian ideology. How, in fact, Darwin's lecturer at Cambridge, or Darwin's mentor at Cambridge, wrote to him, and one of the sentiments he expressed is that he thought that Darwin had deliberately created his ideology to undermine the Bible and undermine Christianity. And he told Darwin that he thought that this thing that he had done, this idea that he had created, would undermine basic morality and lead man into an era of death. And he did. So yeah, so that's something that I thought would be. So I will be talking about this. So, I'll be discussing this. So these are some of the slides. I've got quite a bit to do. This is only part one. I'm at slide 23. It'll probably be about 50 slides. That'll be part one. And part two will be even more extensive. So this is like an introduction to Darwin. And then I will be doing Darwin and Hitler. So even though this talks about the Third Reich, it's more about Darwin, less about Hitler. But the second part will be leaning toward, it's really more Darwin. Your thoughts, Thunders? And and then you can tell us what you want to talk about today. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it can be underestimated, the influence of Darwinian evolution. For me personally, when you look at history, I tend to look at things from the Industrial Revolution moving forward. And it's interesting to note that in the 18th century, how many people wrote certain things that were ideas or formulated or postulations that are thought out in the 18th century, which are now mainstream science today, and influences that have manipulated themselves into other areas. And no doubt that in the coming weeks and months, you and I are going to be talking about such things. So Mary Sanger is one example. I think for the audience, just so that they know, Lloyd and myself met several years ago on another channel, but we lost communication. We reunited via Thaddeus, and this is the subject that Lloyd and myself have wanted to do for some time, is Darwinian evolution, how it hides behind atheism. Atheism is something people say that they're an atheist, but when you press an atheist as to how they view science and how they view the world, their own origins and the origins of the universe, they'll normally default to Darwinian evolution. So the reality is that when you speak into an atheist, they're not actually an atheist, not in the slightest. What they are is an evolutionist. Now,
which comes across like a religion, doesn't it?
If you say that's where your faith is,
it's the Genesis story told without God. It's creation without God.
Exactly that. If that's where you're putting your faith, that's what your religion is by very definition. Okay. Now they will say that there's no such word as an evolutionist. Well, I don't know if you can screen share and Google this for me, Lloyd, evolutionist, and you'll actually come up with a definition. So by implication, you have to ask the question, okay, then, so which came first, evolution or atheism? Well, for the evolutionist or the atheist, evolution came first. So if evolution came first, then that's what you are by implication. You're not actually an atheist, you're an evolutionist. Now, the reason why I mentioned the 18th century is because you've got Darwin's evolution, but you've also got things like, I think is it Charles Lyell who wrote about the geological column. You also have Francis Galton who wrote eugenics. So it's interesting that you've got three writings in the 18th century, which go on to then become the foundation of modern day biology as we see it today, spoken of and espoused through the media. It's certainly political circles, in the school, college and universities curriculum as well. It's like a sacred cow that cannot be challenged.
Correct.
You are not allowed to challenge Darwinian evolution. It is an anathema for it to be challenged. Okay. Yet the irony is when you look at, say, Darwinian evolution, and for those that have got experience with speaking to Muslims, you'll find that even though the subject is different, Islam and evolution, they couldn't be more opposite to each other. Yet for somebody who accepts the biblical narrative as a reality, the arguments in the ad hominem are exactly the same. Both appeal to science, yet both of them, when you look at the very definition of what science means, which is postulating something, testing something, and seeing what the results are, neither of them have science behind to back them up. When you consider that both of them claim to have any kind of sense of morality, Islam says it's the cure for mankind and the solution for humanity. Anyone with even entry level intellects will see that Islam has no morality about it, not in the slightest, not on your Nelly. When you look at, say, Darwinian evolution, the Darwinian point of view is there is nothing beyond the material. I mean, one of the things that we discussed before we came on air earlier on today was watching a video of Richard Dawkins. I've actually uploaded it to my channel today. One of them anyway. And for anybody that's new to the show or listening to me for the first time, I've had two of my YouTube channels deleted in the past. My second one, which was very much an attack on Darwinian evolution, got deleted. I'm not sure why. Perhaps they didn't like the material, but I'm going to, if the audience can make some comments in the show notes and certainly in the comments after the show, if they want to see more material, then I'll make the effort to do it. But I went extensively through it last time, put some up, got deleted, got disheartened by it. But if people are interested in the subject, I'll do it all again. And there are some examples of the material I'll put up today, including one subject that will be gone.
Oh, sorry, no, just some people are getting some bandwidth issues. There's not much I can do about that. I'm just running a bandwidth test. It has rained here in Warsaw, which does seem to affect the internet. But on your discussion of morality, just a few quotes. As I said, I only started on these slides today. So it says here, the war of annihilation is a natural law without which the organic world could not continue to exist at all. That's German zoologist Gustav Jäger in 1870. Because Darwin's ideas really took root in Germany. Just as in nature, the struggle for existence is the moving principle of evolution and perfection. So the struggle for existence is the moving principle of evolution. So also in world history, the destruction of the weaker nations through the stronger is a postulate of progress. And that's German ethnologist Friedrich Helwald in 1875. And according to Darwin's theory, wars have always been of the greatest importance for the general progress of the human species. The physically weaker, the less intelligent, the morally lower, must give place to the stronger. Now the scary part is, let me share this with you. Hold on, let me share my screen with you, Thunder, so that you can at least see what I have going. Okay, there it is. Is that who decides? Yeah. So, well, check it on YouTube then, because it will also be playing on YouTube. Yeah, so, I mean, this is what Darwin's ideas have led to. Also, let me see. Actually, Darwin states in one of his books that he states here, for instance, this is a quote, this is a letter that Darwin wrote to a German scientist called W. Preyer, I believe, in 1868. Darwin states very bluntly, the support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail. And then he says, the younger naturalists are almost all on my side, and sooner or later the public must follow all of those who make the subject their special study. So he knew that he had to push this idea into the universities.
Yeah, I think we discussed this previously as well, several months ago, where I quoted the book "The War on God." Perhaps I'll dig out that quote. I wasn't expecting to discuss it tonight. Where this actually goes back historically, where to about 17th century in France, where they wanted to get into the education system and have this kind of like anti-God and then obviously when because Darwin isn't the originator of origin of the species. Erasmus Darwin, his father, was also somebody who very much wanted to promote this no God, everything is natural point of view. So it does. Charles Darwin's become, say, the poster guy for this, but he's not the originator of this. He's merely the poster guy. Moving forward, but when you look at, say, the people that are supporting him, quoting him, if you like, and wanting to be inclined to draw closer to him, they're pretty much people of the same social standing. So that is more the educated and the elite. And who are they really speaking about? It is the people at the bottom end of the totem pole, people that they will consider plebs, or people
Right.
that they will consider not, that were detrimental to society, people of no account. It's very much like the Pharisees' attitude to the poor and downtrodden in Jerusalem. They call them the Amharites, the people of the ground.
Well,
They were the people of concern.
well, the very first genocide of the 20th century was committed by the Germans in what was called Southwest Africa, today Namibia. And it's against a group called the Herero. And the man that did it, the General von Trocha, used explicitly Darwinist terminology because they divided humans into those who were viable economically and those who were not, those who had worth and those who didn't. And the Herero were not seen as having of any value. And thus, it was okay to exterminate them. So they murdered, I think, 250,000 of them. And this was inspired by the very first genocide of the 20th century, was inspired by Darwinism. And then, of course, you go on to World War I, which inspired by Darwinism, and World War II as well.
And then subsequently democide, which is the murder by a government of its own people, which we've seen in communist China, we've seen communist Russia, we've seen in communist Cambodia and other locations as well, have all been inspired by Darwinian evolution. There's a principle. There's a couple of things I want to mention from the outset as far as the biblical narrative point of view is concerned. One of them is scripture in Revelation, chapter 18, verse 4. Give me a moment. I'm actually going to quote it, if I may. Lloyd, are you okay with that?
Revelation 8, so you said Revelation?
Chapter 18, verse 4. And it's a principle. We're not going to discuss who Babylon is. We're looking at what is God's point of view and why we consider it this way. So it says there, let me just get, I'm using the Young's literal translation. And it reads here, and I heard a voice come out of heaven, come forth out of her, my people, that ye may not partake of her sins, and ye may not receive of her plagues. So what does that actually mean? Well, in the Bible, God is speaking of Babylon the Great. We're not interested in that subject at the moment. We're just looking at the principle of God is saying to people, get out from Babylon, otherwise you're going to share in her sins and you're going to receive her plagues. Well, why is God condemning one thing, but also the people are going to go along with it? That if you don't get out of this, whatever this Babylon is, you're going to go down with it. And the principle is a thing called communal responsibility. Okay, what that means is if you sign up to something, or if you're a part of something, or if you support something, then from God's point of view, you are a part of it. You are with it. It wouldn't exist unless it got your support. So when God brings judgment against it, you're going down with it. For instance, you could turn around and say things like, well, when God brings judgment, there are 1.7 billion human beings who identify as as Muslims. But what's God's point of view? Well, when God brings judgment, they're going down with the religion of Islam. Of course they are, because they are Islamic adherents. But there are good people in there. That may well be the case, but they identify with something that is a blatant apostasy towards God. So ignorance is not a privilege that people can just quote. It's not a privilege, it's an oblivion. So the principle of what I'm trying to raise here is that if you say that you're an atheist, if you're going to identify as such, then you are accountable for the historical atrocities that have been done in the ideology that you claim to be an adherent of, or something that you subscribe to. So it's not a case of I have my own version of atheism. It doesn't quite work like that. If you're basically saying you're an atheist and you identify using that word, then by definition you're going down with it from a, or you're associated with it and you're going to go down with it from a godly point of view, just the same as any other ideology that is a blasphemy in God's eyes.
Yeah, I
Does
just
that
want
make
to
sense?
hold on a second. I just want to make a note. S.P. Jones, you stated that the first genocide of the 20th century was the Armenian genocide, which is 1915, and the Herero genocide is 1904 to 1907. So I'm not very good at maths because I grew up in Africa, but I think this one is bigger than this one. That's just my thinking on the matter. Yeah, sorry, go on, Thunders. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's communal responsibility that has to take place for people who identify with an ideology as such. But as we've said, if you press an atheist on what they believe, they will go to Darwinian evolution. That is their default. So as far as I'm concerned, you're a Darwinian evolutionist. You're an evolutionist, and this is something else that people have to understand as well. If you depending on what kind of, I know you, Lloyd, read the same books as I do, particularly on the intelligent design counter argument to Darwinian evolution, which has a lot more credibility and by definition science to support it. And when you read those books, you actually start to understand that the lies that are spoken of in Darwinian evolution to support it, so much so that we're
Right.
now going into a point of time where we are actually where the scientific field that are basically against God or against the idea of intelligent design are having to formulate a new idea, a new argument, because the Darwinian model has failed utterly now. We're no further forward since Charles Darwin wrote Origin of the Species to today, some over 150 years later. We are no further forward in proving whether Darwinian evolution is even possible.
I
There has
think
not been
we're
any
further probably.
evidence
Look, this is not my expertise, the science of it, but from what I've watched and seen, we're further away, and it doesn't make any
yes.
sense.
Absolutely. I mean, the suggestion. I mean, here's another thing that people could do when they've got 5 minutes. Type into your Google search bar geological column location on Earth. That's all you got to do. Then go to images and tell me what you see. So do that as an experiment now.
Right.
Geological column location on Earth. Then go to Google Images.
What's the term I should type in?
Geological column location on Earth.
Oops. And what are we looking for?
And go to images. What do you
Radio.
see? What do you see? You notice that? I said geological column location on Earth. Why are we seeing artistic impression? That's the point. You've got it there. That's it, Lloyd. That's it. That's all we need. Why is it? Where is the location on Earth? You're not seeing any location on Earth. All you're seeing is an image, a cartoon, a
Cartoons.
painting, a drawing, a speculation. Why is that? You know why that is? Because it doesn't exist anywhere on Earth. It's a fraud invented in the 1850s by Charles Lyell, a Scottish lawyer. So all
Okay,
this Jurassic.
that's interesting. A Scottish lawyer. It's just so by sheer coincidence, John Calvin's a lawyer, and maybe someone in the audience can actually help me out with this and correct me if I'm wrong or find me the evidence. Martin Luther went to university to study law. Now I find conflicting stories on this, but I find a lack of information. So what I'm learning is that Martin Luther was, like John Calvin, was also a lawyer, right? Remember, John Calvin was a lawyer, didn't qualify as a theologian, to my knowledge, right? He did qualify as a lawyer, which means he learned how to make arguments and rebuttals and such. Twist words, if you will. But Luther also qualified as a lawyer, except back in the day, you didn't get a law degree because there was no proper law faculty, and a legal degree was issued through the philosophy faculty. So you got your master's in philosophy, you got your bachelor's in philosophy, then your master's. He received both his bachelor's in 1502, I think, and then in 1505, he got his master's. So they say, well, he qualified in philosophy, but apparently that philosophy degree was your legal degree, because they didn't have a fully recognized legal degree, but that was. So if someone can find out or knows more about it, please let me know. So it's interesting, lawyers that are very good at making arguments. So just thought maybe that's relevant.
And I don't think it's a coincidence either, Lloyd, that you should bring up that when we're seeing certain things entering the educational system, that they're entering into it via a legal system or a legal mandate or a legal loophole or a manipulation of language in order to get it put in. There's something else as well for those who accept the biblical narrative, is that how can these things happen on earth and be done with immunity and impunity? What's the source behind it? Well, for anybody that accepts the biblical narrative, you have to accept that Genesis is telling us a very real story about two human beings that God placed in the Garden of Eden. That is a real account. I don't take it as some kind of allegory to something else. For me, Adam and Eve are real people. When you listen to Paul, certainly when you listen to Jesus, Jesus himself quoted Adam when he said he who created me in the beginning, he made a male and female. That is why what God has put together, let no man is put apart. Paul refers to Jesus as the last Adam. Paul also talks about just as death entered into the world through one man, we gain life through one man. So the biblical narrative, without going too much into it, has Adam and Eve as real people. They weren't at some point some kind of chemicals that came together in a primordial soup, no croutons obviously in that soup, and then developed into a cell that developed into a trilobite, that developed into a fish, that developed into an amphibian, that developed into a reptile, and then the reptile developed into birds, mammals, and more reptiles. We won't talk about the plants because we don't know how that happened, but there was already food on the land for them to eat when they got out there. And obviously these creatures had a fantastic digestive system to digest that food, and they knew what to eat, but we'll discuss that at another time. The point I'm getting at is that for those who accept the biblical narratives, really, it hasn't helped many people in the Christian congregations, where certain churches have now accepted and adopted Darwinian evolution as true. Notably two, I'll mention. The Catholic Church, which put out a story where the Pope himself referred to people as taking the biblical narrative. That was in the 2005 Times newspaper, which I've cut out. And the Church of England also accept that the evolution account is true and that is allegorical. So why are we mentioning all of this? What has that got to do with the discussion and where Lloyd and myself want to go with all of this?
Sorry, Thunders, you're breaking up a little bit. Your connection is fading in and out. Yeah, just hold on a second, Thunderous. Danny, there's a guy called Danny in the chat. Now, Danny, it's an article of faith of the religion of atheism, because atheism is, at least within the US, atheism is legally recognized. Atheists went to court. Atheist organizations went to court multiple times, went to the High Court, and in the US, atheism is legally recognized as a religion, as is secular humanism. They're both recognized as religions. So you are all religious atheists. And modern atheism dates to the French Revolution, to the time of the philosophes of the Enlightenment. And these ideas that are present within atheism today, the doctrine, the dogma within atheism, those are long established, about 250 years approximately. And many of those state that atheism is explicitly a religion. In fact, it's a replacement religion. It simply redefines who God is. You become God. So there is a difference. Sorry, yeah?
Excellent point, Lloyd, because what you've just said there is that man replaces God, and then man makes laws and sets his morality in his own image rather than follow the objective laws set out by God himself. The interesting thing is with Danny, you people like they use pejoratives. Oh, you lot need a sky daddy. It's a sky daddy religion. Okay, fine. You can mock me with that little ad hominem. I'll take that. Right, I don't believe in magic, and you do, see, because in your worldview as an atheist, well, you're not actually an atheist, you're an evolutionist, so don't dress yourself up in a suit that doesn't fit. You're actually an evolutionist. And in your model, the universe came from nothing. The only person I know that can make something come from nothing is a magician, so you believe in magic. Then you've got life coming from non-life. If anything is a miracle, son, that's a miracle. And then you have life producing so many varieties of species and vegetation with no evidence. That's a mystery. So you've got magic, miracles, and mystery, and you've got no evidence for it, and that's where you put your faith. And you call me the fool? Have a word with yourself, son.
No. Welcome, Hariel. Thank you very much for signing up, for joining. I really do appreciate the support. Also, for Danny's information, when you go through, so this is my slide deck here that I've got on about, it goes through about 80 different definitions from the world's major atheist scholars. We're talking PhD scholars at university, most of them lecturers who've written major textbooks, who contributed to works like the Oxford Companion to Philosophy, to the gold standard, which is the Princeton, the Princeton Guide to Philosophy. And they will tell you bluntly that atheism is a doctrine, right? It is a doctrine. A doctrine is not a lack of belief. It's not a psychological state, because atheism is a continuous doctrine, is a set of ideas, a set of beliefs, an organized ideology. When you go through that, so this is something that is very much accepted within academia. And if you're merely a lack of belief, then it's not a scientific position, right? Because a lack of belief, just a feeling, is not a truth statement. It cannot be true, it cannot be false, it just is. So then how can you claim atheism is a scientific position? It is merely, quite literally, ignorance. Thunderous, back to you.
I think that, first of all, anybody that wants to quote science needs to, who is a Darwino atheist, and that's my own word, the Franken word, Darwino atheist, they need to look up the word science and then tell me what it means, and then see if it applies to their worldview, because it doesn't.
But also, if it's just a lack of belief, then it needs to supplement what it loses by not having access to religious ideas. It needs to now supplement with other ideas, so it now has to adopt additional ideas from somewhere else. So therefore, it has to borrow. So it's not just a lack of belief. It now needs to find other views to support its worldview. Atheism is the doctrine, right? And these arguments are directed against the Christian God. So, and that's just continuous. Sorry, right. Go on again.
So go on.
No. Go. You go.
What I was going to say was, as well, is that when you speak to a Darwino atheist as well, and you compare that to somebody who looks at the biblical narrative, fine, I can accept that there might be points of disagreement. So let's look at the Genesis account. Nobody would challenge that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. That's a clear statement of who did what, where, and when. Okay, who did what, where, when, and when. Also, when you consider the point, so nobody will argue with that, but you'll find some that may say, well, were the 7 days literally 24 hours? Were there 1,000 years each day, or was it an unspecified period of time that could have been many hundreds of thousands or millions of years? That's where the disagreements can come in, and I can accept that. I may differ with you, Lloyd, on the 7 days, whether literal or figurative.
I think we do.
I think we probably do. But they're kind of like minor. They're not salvation issue disagreements, really, are they? They're just minor disagreements based on what we can interpret. However, when you speak to a Darwino atheist and you say, what about the origins of the universe? I mean, going by what Dr. David Belinsky wrote in his book, The Devil's Delusion, Atheistic and Scientific Pretensions, which I've read, and I think you've read that as well. You know, which version of the origin of the universe are you speaking about? Are you speaking about the one where the universe just popped into existence by magic and then it's going to spread out, and then the force of the universe expanding is going to move celestial objects away from each other, so the universe basically, or certainly planet Earth, is going to freeze? Or are you the one that believes where the universe will stretch to a certain point and then it will contract and go back to the infinitely dense singularity, which means Earth will burn up? Or are you the atheist that turns around and says, or Darwino atheist that turns around and says, well, I believe in the oscillating universe where it goes in, out.
Just pause a moment. Danny tells us that the days refer to Daniel, the Iturbite, the days refer to trillions of years. So it's obvious. Daniel, no, it's not trillions. The commonly accepted scientific consensus is 13.8 billion. Yeah. So no, not trillions. There's no support for trillions.
But that figure has changed over the past 60 years as well, Lloyd. That's just the figure that we have now. But probably if the system went on for another 100 years, we may have a different figure. It might be only 10 or 5 billion years old.
Yeah, because but based on, just based on current state of science, this is what it is. Yeah. So.
But since 2017, we've had the James White telescope go into space. and it's looking further than what Hubble has done, and that will be yielding different results than what Hubble's been able to do thus far. So that number will change, but it doesn't matter what the number is. We we're talking about the origin of the universe. I'd like to know if amongst the opinions so far, do these Darwinian atheists, because they have the other version, which is the universe inside a universe, or the other version is where they have a machine spitting out different multiverses.
Mm-hmm.
So which one is it that they believe in? So when you speak to a Darwinian atheist, they like to mock the creationists and those who support intelligent design. Well, I just counter argue, well, which Mickey Mouse version of the universe do you believe in? Because as Dr. David Belinsky put it, anything is better than nothing. Nothing is better than God. And that's what we're coming down to. An atheist will extrapolate to believe anything which is fanciful, sort of like the buzz belief of the universe for that moment, and then we'll adopt something else. Whereas the creationist is pretty much sitting on the same fence, same seat and foundation.
If I can just interrupt you for a second, I want to go back to, this is again to Danny. So Danny, what I did was, as I told you, I collected something like 80 quotes from the very best scientific sources available, including the top atheists in the world, PhD scholars, lecturers at Princeton, Harvard, Cambridge, so on, Oxford and whatnot. This is Jordan Sobel in the textbook. You can see it's a Cambridge textbook called Logic and Theism, Arguments for and Against Beliefs in God. And Danny, you are a tedious pain. You are clearly not listening. These are scientists. They do study atheism. Atheism is a massive field of study. You are clearly ignorant. This is Jordan Sobel. If one takes up the task of providing sound arguments for atheism, formidable difficulties arise. It is much easier to punch holes in theistic arguments than to actually argue for truth of atheism. This is in Logic and Atheism, Arguments for and Against Beliefs in God, Cambridge 2009, and he was at the University of Toronto. Before his death, Sobel was considered the leading philosophical defender of atheism prior to Graham Oppy. Let's continue with what he says here. When the latter is undertaken, that's the defense of atheism, we find that the needs of and the problems of the atheist are parallel to those of the theist. To impose the same argumentative restrictions upon the atheist is to show that the position is at least as inadequately defended as theism. Whatever the reason for its widespread acceptance, atheism is no less a matter of faith than theism. So, now, do we accept you, who is a Reddit-level atheist, or do we accept Dr. Jordan Howard Sobel, PhD, who apparently was having this taught at Cambridge? Go on, Thunders. Thanks.
Yeah, so I forgot where I was on my train of thought. I was just distracted by what you brought up there. So so Danny mentions the comment that I've been speaking to, or basically theists basically speak to Facebook atheists, but that's where they all are. When you're speaking to an atheist, who do you think I'm speaking to? Of course, I'm speaking to the layman atheist. But then you're making out as if to suggest that atheism has its own code or its own sort of set of objective rules or values or scientific structure. But you don't. You don't have anything of the like. So in effect, atheism or Darwinian atheism is a free-for-all. So obviously, I'm going to attack any kind of avenue that I'm going to see, because that's very much what you're doing to the theist. You attack. So we're just reciprocating the response now. But let me just bring out something else in all of this. Okay, when you're speaking to a Darwinian atheist, they will often hide behind people like Sobel or Christopher Hitchens or Sam Harris or the great druid himself, Richard Dawkins. But what they're in effect doing is hiding. They're hiding behind a thing called gatekeeping. And I actually uploaded a video on my channel today, Noam Chomsky, Intellectual Gatekeeper. And it's a fascinating insight into how gatekeeping works, where you have academic gatekeeping, authoritative gatekeeping, positional gatekeeping, where people hide behind their credentials or their authority And it's almost like they put up a bulwark that you can't get past. And what you'll find is people like Danny will turn around and say, well, I've read this book by this atheist, I've read this by that. I don't care what you've read. It's about whether the argument stacks. If the argument doesn't stack, then it doesn't matter who you quote, and hiding behind some guy because he's got credentials doesn't really mean anything. You've got two people in a room. One of them is saying that organic soup came together and produced the first cell. One man says, no, it didn't. Can you prove it? Well, both of them have got university credentials. Both of them have got PhDs. Both of them are professors. So which academic keeper are you going to hide behind? Well, what you're really doing is you're just hiding behind your presupposition and you quote mining for the argument that you've gone with. That's all you're doing. I'm going with the science.
Right. Yeah, just to maybe go through some of these. For instance, this is Carl Sagan, who tells us an atheist is someone who is certain that God does not exist. Now, clearly, Carl Sagan doesn't know what an atheist is, because an atheist is just someone who lacks a belief. And he says an atheist is someone who has compelling evidence against the existence of God. But then he goes on to say, I know of no such compelling evidence. And that's in the Conversations with Carl Sagan, interview with Edward Waken. That's, so that's the book here. So Carl Sagan seems to not have as much knowledge as Danny.
So how are we getting through in all of this? Well, the point being, if you start having an education system that basically teaches that you're not made in God's image, you're not valuable, and there are no objective moral values, all you are is just advanced form of bacteria, because that's what we came from. So a teacher will be using a curricular system to point to a child and basically say, you're nothing, you're worthless. All you are is just a result of lots of chemical reactions and actions that have taken place from a universe that came from nothing. So the universe came from nothing. The periodic table and time came about from nothing, and then a bunch of chemicals came together, and eventually, after some time, out came you. When you've got an education system that's basically devalues and sort of like lowers the value of a human being and reduces them to being nothing more than a mere animal, what are you expecting that human being to then go on and do? When you've got an education system that starts promoting that, and what in effect you're doing is you're undermining objective theistic values. Now, irrespective of any kind of religious identity, if you the further back in time you go, religion or objective theistic moral values served as a bulwark against outside influences that were damaging to society. I'll give an example. In the 40s and the 50s, if a woman got pregnant, right, and she wasn't married, she was a whore or a slut or a hussy, the child would have been born and it would have been called a bastard. Now, that's a pejorative. It's not a positive. It's a pejorative. As you move forward, you start getting things like people living together. Well, they're living in sin. That used to be a phrase back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, living in sin. The child is a bastard. Then you start, shotgun wedding is another thing. What has happened to society to remove all of these phrases? Well, what's happened is that when you start removing objective theistic moral values from society and you start replacing it with subjective Darwinian evolution as the scientific base, and you promote the moral value, lack of moral values through atheism, that's where we get to the way we have the world today. And what is actually taking place in the world today? I mean, you and I have discussed this before, Lloyd. Are you familiar with what's taking place in Canada and euthanasia laws?
Well, those are the things at the Nuremberg trials that the Nazis were put on trial for and sentenced to death for, which is what the Canadian government is doing today and calling it legal. It was illegal when the Nazis did it.
Yeah, so what they're doing now is...
okay, just hold on a second. Thunders, do you think Danny is actually providing any value? I mean, he's just in denial, and I don't see how this is of any value to the conversation.
What's he saying?
Wasting my time. So
why is he here?
Look,
but Danny, I mean, from your world point of view, can I just say, you're conceived and you're going to die. You've got no point of existence. Even your own druid guru, Richard Dawkins, says that there is no point in life unless you're passing on DNA to replicate yourself. So why are you here? Shouldn't you be busy going out finding some woman to replicate your DNA? Because that's the only point you exist. You have no reason to be sitting in a discussion with theists Okay, and the interesting thing is, if you're going to start bashing people who believe in God, where did the objective morals come from? Where did this abstract concept of God come from? If you look at your own Darwinian evolution model, why did evolution allow the human being to evolve to such a point that it imagined, it created an abstract concept of God, which is diametrically opposed to its own origins? So if you're going to start mocking people who believe in God, well, they only believe in God because Darwinian evolution wanted them to believe in God in the first place. Do you not see how stupid your argument is? I believe in God. From your point of view, I believe in God because Darwinian evolution wanted me to believe in God. That's what I evolved to do. Have you got an answer for that, Dan?
Yeah. I mean, look, atheists will tap dance, and look, my philosophy on this may go against the American idea of free speech, but they are free to go speak somewhere else. If someone had to take a pee on my doorstep, they might find themselves waking up in the expensive care ward, because really these are people that are abusing the right of free speech. They're simply using those rules against you. You are merely allowing and enabling enemies to spout propaganda. I have no interest in listening to propaganda, right? They're not arguing in good faith. They're not trying to make coherent arguments. They are merely using sophistry to run riot, to run wild. The whole point is you are in a war, and you need to understand the other side is your enemy, and they are lying to you. They understand how you work. They've observed you. They've crafted ideas and arguments designed to undermine and destroy your logic. They're not operating on the basis of logic. Therefore, your job is to make sure that their message does not get out. I'm not banning them on YouTube. I'm just not allowing them to talk poop on my channel. The whole point is you get your message out. So somewhere else you can do what you like. However, I am not going to allow those people free reign on my channel. Okay? Wild animals need to be put in zoos, not run free. And these ideas have consequences. These ideas are toxic. These ideas have caused the worst genocide in recorded history since the recording of history began. Atheism in government has murdered more people in 87 years in the 20th century than in the previous 7,000 years before it. So this is really, I mean, or at least in the previous 1,900 years prior to that. This we know. So no, I'm not allowing these people to run free on my channel. I have my message. I'm interested in my message, not their message. They can go spout that somewhere else. Then respect to you.
Well, I don't mind if Danny wants to continue, because the thing I was going to turn around and say is, if you are, and I do this with, particularly with men, and I'll do it in front of other men. And I gave an example of this when I was interviewed by Mr. A couple of years ago on his channel, and it's what's known as reductio ad absurdum. And so I'll go to the Darwin or atheist and I'll say, "You got a daughter?" They'll say yes, and I say, "Well, how many cocks do you want inside your daughter before I say enough's enough? 20, 30, 40? Because in your worldview, there's nothing wrong with that. How many different children do you want your daughter to have by different men? 3, 4, 5? What difference does it make? How many abortions would you like your daughter to have before you think enough's enough? How many sexually transmitted diseases would you like her to experience before you say enough's enough? Because in your worldview, because there is no morality, it's all subjective, from your worldview, there's nothing wrong with that. Or let's look at the stupid people that believe in God, who say one man should marry one woman, they should stay together and unite, work at their marriage and have children only amongst themselves. Which one would you rather have? And I've yet to meet a man turn around and say, I'd rather have the atheistic point of view, the Darwin atheist point of view for my daughter, over having the one man. It's interesting that the inclination of every human being is towards theism, though they reject it. They reject the idea of a God, but they don't reject the rules and the objective morality that God gives mankind.
That is actually a very interesting argument. Because, yeah, I mean, also, I thought the whole point of matter was to procreate. You know, the whole selfish gene story was to procreate, as opposed to, you know, so what's the point of abortion then?
Yeah.
Oh, and just by the way, so everyone, someone just came up with a new name for Luther on my channel. Someone left this comment calling him Lax Luther. because of the letter where Luther writes to his friend to ask him for laxatives because Luther suffered throughout his life from constipation. This is superb. Veronica, you just won the internet today. Oh my gosh, Lex Luthor, this is brilliant. This is, yeah, she wins the internet today. So, oh man.
S.D. Jones writes an interesting point. He says the guy who wrote Universe from Nothing, Lawrence Krauss, admitted he found nothing wrong with incest. That's actually quite true because I remember that as well. I mean, but their counter. I think what they've gone on to say is because as long as incest doesn't produce children, for example, you couldn't have a father have sex with his own daughter or a mother have sex with their own son or brother and sister, because
Yeah.
that might produce children that would have offspring that are going to be negative.
But the
Yet,
Darwinists actually started to inbreed because they felt that they were the superior genetic race and
yes.
therefore they would produce the superior species. And of course, this
Was
led to, genetic, issues, let's just say. Hillbillies,
well,
yeah, as Ariel said.
but wasn't it Charles Darwin and Francis Galton's families united? I think was it theirs or was two others,
Yeah.
and in effect that his own children had health problems. And yeah, I think Darwin himself had health issues. So it's interesting they talk about the survival of the fittest when they weren't really very fit human beings. Neither did their progeny. Neither did their progeny be born with any kind of superior intellect or physical ability. They seem to be degenerates themselves. And was it not Karl Marx? He had 6 children, 3 of them died, and 2 of them committed suicide.
He let a couple of his babies starve to death because he failed to feed them, and then he encouraged his daughters, I believe, through his writings, to commit suicide, and 2 of them did commit suicide. Yeah.
Yeah. What great heroes they are to the atheistic movement, eh?
Yeah. No, the
So to look at all of this, like what we're seeing in the world today with this woke movement, is everything that you're seeing in the world today seems to be a diametrically opposite challenge to the Bible. For instance, when you're talking about conception, the book of Psalms talks about David writes, you saw the embryo of me. In your book, all its parts were written down. But the Darwinian evolutionist says, no, it's just a bunch of cells. You can have it, it's just a fetus, not understanding what the Latin word fetus means. They just use this word as if it's some kind of pejorative, and it's not. It actually means offspring. For instance, a puppy is offspring, a kitten is offspring, a lamb is offspring, thus a baby is offspring. So they are actually using baby, or the word baby, but they don't understand what the Latin word means. But
yeah.
going back to the point, so the Bible makes it clear that life is valuable and God is the source of life, but the world and the atheistic world is saying, well, no, it's not. It's valueless and you can just abort it. The Bible says, in the beginning, God created a male and female. But what are we seeing in the world today now? What we're seeing is, no, ignore that Bible rubbish. You're not a boy or a girl. You can decide what you are. Don't let your genitalia determine what you are. In Scotland, at the age of 4, a 4-year-old child can go to school and turn around and say, let's say it's a little boy called Timmy. He can now turn around and say to the school teacher, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl. I want to dress up in girls' clothes and I want to be called Tabitha. And the school have to, if you like,
Entertain
enforce
that.
have to take that and enforce. And they don't even need parental consent to do that. But when you've got an education system that's supporting that 4-year-old child's worldview, and the children in that school, its peers, will also be supporting, enforcing that worldview. So instead of referring to Timmy as Timothy, he'll be called Tabitha because that's what he wants to be called, or she wants to be called. The only people who are not going to accept that are the parents. So what does that undermine as far as parental authority is concerned? For the child, if its worldviews are going to be enforced by the school system and the state,
There's a question
state in
from
effect-
Dedusa. How does transgenderism promote evolution? It does not. It merely undermines the biblical order.
when you think about it, right, just going away from the 4-year-old subjective point of view of their own identity, heterosexuality doesn't need LGBTQI drag maps. LGBTQI drag maps requires heterosexuality. Isn't that an ironic? Because if everybody in the world today became LGBTQI drag maps, I think within a generation there'll be no human beings left. What does that tell you about biology? Which makes sense. But the thing is this, you're not finding the atheist argue with any of this because there is no objective moral value. This is why all of this stuff is creeping in. So that goes back to what I was saying about the 30s and the 40s, with no matter what religion you believed in, those objective moral values served as a bulwark against these influences that will slowly try to creep in. But when you remove theology and its objective moral values, you have to replace it with something, and woke is what's replaced those objective moral values, where now you've just got this rampant mass confusion as to what is real and what isn't real.
Right. I'm just going to make a few points from the slideshow that I'm busy working on. I'll be working on this tomorrow and Sunday, my new slide deck on Darwin. As I said, I have all the notes written out. This might not seem like a lot, but it's actually a pile of notes that runs down to the bottom here. And then I have to, so that's part 2 that I have to do. Part 1 is roughly done. So, but Darwinism devalued human life, right? So the debate over the significance of social Darwinism in Germany is very important, because this gives us background to discussions of Hitler's ideology and the roots of German imperialism in World War I. They're Darwin's views are very much related to that. Now, Hitler was a social Darwinist, right? And he viewed history as a struggle for existence amongst unequal races. The inferior races needed to be eliminated. And all Hitler's scholars agree on this point, and it is too obvious to deny when you read Mein Kampf. Hitler was a social Darwinist. Darwinism impacted thinking about the value of human life and the significance of death. And as predicted, Darwinism led to the worst genocides in history, in the 20th century, by people who... Marx was an avid Darwinist, and the Soviets, murdered hundreds of millions, right? Now, prominent German Darwinists urged their society to reevaluate its stance on today what is known as biomedical ethics, which are infanticide, euthanasia, suicide, and abortion. Don't forget, the Nazis implemented infanticide, euthanasia, right? And yeah, the French Revolution atheists, especially under Marquis de Sade, they promoted abortion. This goes back to, so these are atheist ideas. Infanticide, euthanasia, suicide, and abortion are atheist ideas. You remove morality, and this is what you get. You devalue human life. So instead of being made in the image of God, you are just clay, meat, whatever. So leading Darwinists invoked Darwinian science to undermine traditional Christian ethical values. Darwin was aware of this, but he, as I said, he designed it knowingly to undermine biblical morality. So this is what's going to be part of what I'll be discussing in this series going forward.
And you notice there was something else as well. Didn't they do where they were forced sterilizations as well on people they considered imbeciles so that they didn't breathe? So if there are people that are born in a particular environment, poor environment, or they were medically unsound, or they were alcoholics or drug addicts, they would forcibly sterilize people. I think that also happened in America as well.
Correct. And Vegetal says here, without God, the only moral code would be might makes right. And that's exactly what we saw. Post-Darwinism, right? This is exactly what happened. This is what I'll be discussing in this talk as well. This will be a fairly lengthy series as well. This is just the introduction, these slides here. The first 23 is the introduction. I'm still busy working on fleshing out the other slides. Like, I still have to clean all this up and, so on, and then add additional data here. But this is the first set, and then the second set's going to be longer, and there's more as well to discuss the moral issues. So, yeah, Darwinism led to immorality, to murder on a massive scale. It enabled the devaluing of people, saying, well, those people are not as good as us, and they are holding back the human race. Kill them. That's really what happened.
Harry L. Johnson makes a point, Satan, the devil, wants to destroy mankind. That was the other biblical point I wanted to raise. That some, sadly to say, that adhere to the biblical narrative find uncomfortable talking about, and I've actually heard them say this, that they think that the Satan is not real. It is a phrase that that was concocted because they didn't have words for mental, schizophrenia or any kind of mental illness. So Satan is some kind of word to, if you like, suggest that it was actually mental illness and not the devil. But that's kind of ironic, because Genesis chapter 3 verses 1 to 5 clearly talks about something was happening there, which we get an answer to. Revelation, is it 12:7 or 12:9? 1 John 5:19 says the whole world is lying in the power of the wicked one. When Jesus was baptized, who was it that led him away and tried to tempt him 3 times? Then you got the book of Job chapter 1, where Satan enters before God himself, and over the argument over the challenge of Job's integrity. Then you have Paul saying that Jesus came to break the works of the devil. So you can't disclude the fact that from the biblical narrative, these fallen angels, Satan and his horde of fallen angels, are actually opposition to God. So when we are looking at the philosophies of what we see in the world today, it isn't just the invention of men. There's something more going on here that is a direct attack on the Bible. So this goes back to when God says something like, life is precious. David saying, you saw the embryo of me. And now we're living in a world that says, well, abortion is, it's just another form of contraception, or it's just a clump of cells. Who's thinking, are they really adopting or manifesting there? When God says in the beginning, I created a male and female, and now you're living in a world that says, no, a 4-year-old child can decide what sex they are. And if a 16-year-old girl wants to have a double mastectomy, there's nothing wrong with that. And yet even that is kind of like, as perverted as it is, let's look at the change in mental attitude. In the 80s, I don't know what it was like in South Africa or Poland or in America, but in England in the 80s and the 90s, I think particularly what brought it forward was the death of Karen Carpenter, the singer of the Carpenters, because she suffered from anorexia and bulimia.
Yeah.
Now, nobody will have suggested that anorexia or bulimia, was a normal condition. Everybody recognized it, though the phrase wasn't touted at the time, but it was body image dysphoria. You wouldn't go up to somebody that suffers from bulimia or anorexia, say, hey, have a couple of hunger suppressants, that'll sort you out, or do you want some liposuction today? You wouldn't do that. Yet today they're prepared to form a double mastectomy on a 16-year-old girl on a whim that clearly has mental issues, not with the body image dysphoria. This is the world that we're living in.
Just pause a second, if you would, Thunderous. So I want to bring attention to this is the book by Margaret Sanger, Woman and the New Race. All right, Woman and the New Race by Margaret Sanger. And this is a quote from the book. The most merciful thing that the large family does to one of its infant members is to kill it. I will drop this link in the chat. So this is what atheism has led to. This is what Darwinism and eugenics has led to. So your thoughts on that, what you see here?
Well, are we not? It's almost like when the Canaanites were sacrificing their children to Molech. Abortion seems to be the scientific version of that sacrifice that we're living in the world today.
Yes, it is. It certainly is. Yes, it is sacrifice to Molech. Yes.
So we have to look at things from a spiritual level, from the biblical narrative. What are we seeing in the Bible that is being replicated today, but somehow it's being grafted on in a very different way, but it's still the same thing, but somehow it appears different. And you're seeing the sacrifices to Molech and abortion. What's the difference?
There is no difference. The one is just scientific sacrifice to Molech.
Scientific, but there's no science behind it. It's the science without science.
Yeah, of course. It's just a word they use, right? It's just a word. So it's just what they claim it to be.
So when you're moving forward as well in time from, say, the 30s and 40s, we've also seen, family, as far as the biblical narrative is concerned, is very important. All of the families, they were encouraged to say families. God in the Bible clearly wants families to stay together. But since the decline of objective theistic moral values in society, are we not seeing now where there are no such things as families anymore, or families now are being reduced, where marriage, rather than being a lifelong commitment, prenups are part of the vernacular now. It's part of the process that if you're going to get married, have a prenup sorted. Well, what's the point getting married if you've got the divorce sorted? What's the point getting married if the divorce is already settled before you're married? Isn't that already telling you that your marriage is going to be doomed to failure, or it's going to have a failure? So just in case, or just as when it does fail, we've already got the back doors open. So we're seeing very much everything that God, I mean, I think it's in Malachi 2:16 where it says God hates divorce. He hates it. Yet the world
Mhm.
says, have a prenup, have the divorce sorted before you get married. Or, having an affair is just a euphemism for infidelity. Well, Jesus said, he who looks in the woman supposed to have a passion for has already committed adultery in his heart. But the world, through soap operas and such things, almost makes these kind of acts of infidelity look attractive. They look exciting. It'll spice up your marriage. The world is totally opposite. And this is all because you've removed objective theistic moral values and you've replaced it with Darwin or atheism. This is what's caused the breakups of society today.
Right. Actually, I want to show everyone this. Thunderous, have you seen this quote? This is from Oxford Academic. It's a publication called the American Historical Review, which is published here with Oxford. It's also featured in the National Library of Medicine. And it's an article on Martin Luther's body, the Stout Doctor and his biographers by historian Lyndall Roper. And just, could you read that for us, Thunderous?
It says that he wrote to his friend George Spalatin during his stay in Augsburg by turns, asking him for laxatives and entrusting him with his manuscripts, or when, in some of his very last letters to his wife, he described his inability to be sexually aroused by the sight of prostitutes and blamed Jews for his illness.
So you just mentioned prostitution and infidelity to your wife. Say again.
Is sexually aroused by the sight of prostitutes and blamed Jews for his illness?
Yeah, but didn't you say that, thou shalt not commit sexual immorality?
Jesus said that.
Yeah.
It's in the Sermon on the Mount.
And also, just for this is Lax Luther, laxatives, Lax Luther. But besides that, so Luther was unable to be aroused by the sight of prostitutes. Now here's the thing. Was Luther walking down the street looking at prostitutes, or was Luther looking at prostitutes? If you get my drift, right? And then
he got him off Tinder.
Say again, please.
He got him off Tinder.
Your connection broke up. Say again, please.
He was probably looking at prostitutes via Tinder or Pornhub.
Yes. Luther, all 330 pounds of him. And here's the issue. So I discovered this yesterday. According to a medical diagnosis based on some new documents were discovered about Luther, one of these was a letter from his doctor. And they described at length some of his symptoms. So I've just discovered this yesterday after I found these notes, that Luther didn't get it up when he was looking at prostitutes. And of course, you could argue, well, Luther was just walking down the street ogling. Okay, maybe that's a bad thing. No. Maybe it's a little bit more, because tell me something, Thunderous. How do you get syphilis? Do you get syphilis from, I don't know, chewing bubblegum?
No. Isn't that what Al Capone had as well? Isn't that something to do with being sexually promiscuous?
I don't know. In Luther's case, it's probably special. But how would, let's just say the medical diagnosis based on the symptoms is that Martin Luther, very possibly had syphilis. So I'm going to guess now. If you guys can give me three guesses, does one get syphilis from A, falling down the stairs, B, eating bananas, C, sleeping with prostitutes? Please drop your answer. A, falling downstairs, B, eating...
Can I phone a friend? Or can I take a 50?
Yes, you may, as long as you can put them on speakerphone so we can hear what they say.
Well, I'm going to call you. So, excuse me, dude, I've got a question. What do you invite Luther Dowie on?
So I'll be talking about all this as soon as I can verify all of these things. But this one's legit. The doctor, this doctor or these group of doctors legitimately think that based on the symptoms described in this newly discovered material, Martin Luther had syphilis. Now, does that put a different spin on this discussion of prostitutes, Thunderous?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that in there. So, Lax Luther, Dr. Syphilis. Yeah. Okay, so thanks. Back to your discussion.
Yeah, so really with when you're looking at the world today, because they've removed the objective theistic moral values from society, and I keep using that phrase, objective theistic moral values, because I'm trying to generalize a
Hmm.
society irrespective of any kind of denominational value. I'm just using it as a generalization that when society had a God belief system, families were strong, communities were strong, the neighborhood was strong, and it also self-governed as well. But now that we've removed removed all these things, one only has to look out the window, particularly in children. We now have a situation where men are encouraged to be grafted into the school education system so that they can serve not just as school teachers, but also serve as like a surrogate father for the child that doesn't have the father at home, which is becoming kind of like a feature of society today, where siblings have half sibling brothers or sisters, and where mummy has probably 2 or 3 children by 2 or 3 different men, where we've got drug addiction, we've got a rise in suicide, we've got
Hmm.
a rise in crime, we've got a rise in feral behavior. And this is the irony is that the atheist turns around and says that the God belief is stupid and foolish. They use pejoratives like sky daddy and such. Well, let's look at the window. Let's look out the window today, son. Let's look at your world in your image. Would you honestly say, when looking back, 50 years as to what society was like in comparison to, forget the science, just look at the morality. 50 years ago today, what did society look like? Then move forward today and let's look at society today. Which one had more objective theistic moral values? Look how it governed itself. And let's look at today with the removal of objective theistic moral values. Let's look at the amoral world that is atheistic and Darwinian as its scientific foundation, and tell me which one is the better world that you'd rather live in comparison.
Think I
That's
would.
where you have to look at the woke.
I mean, do you want to live in woke Seattle? You know, where you've got these tent cities cropping up, and it's this. No, I don't. I mean, look, you look at Poland. As you know, Poland's a Catholic country, and as you know, Catholicism is Satanism, and Poland is a very peaceful country, incredibly peaceful, family-oriented, safe place. Despite following Satanism. So yeah, I mean, I think I would rather have a religious community, than the woke. And I mean, you see what's happening with the crazy wokeness and other crazy ideologies in the rest of the world, like in France, for instance.
And the problem is, as well, so when you're looking at moral values that are theistic in origin, they tend to stand as law for millennium. You know, you don't change things like, let's look at the Ten Commandments. They won't change from the time that they're instituted to the time that they're no longer required, and that's when God removes them himself. But society that's amoral and doesn't have any objective moral values, they're fickle and capricious. So they're changing all the time as to what is right and what is wrong. You've only got to look at today, for instance, and no one's taken away the humanity of any individual that's involved with the LGBTQI drag maps. They're all human beings and they're all made in God's image. Right. But even within that movement of LGBTQI drag maps, you'll find that the LGB are now wanting to move away from the rest of them. So even that alphabet salad is being fragmented, because with the LGB, when it was with Pride, they wanted to be just recognized as normal human beings. They weren't trying to promote homosexuality. They were just wanted to be recognized as normal human beings. Look, we have this, if you like, inclination, but we're just normal human beings. We're
Yeah.
not different, and we want to be respected. That's all it was.
But now they're coming for your kids, because that was just the tip of the spear. That was just
Yes.
that was just the soft sell. But now the real agenda is exposed, because that was just, how can I say, that was the wedge to open the door. And now they've pried it open, and now the crazies who actually run the show, they are exposing this agenda. This we're seeing now.
The thing is, it's gaining more power. I think there's probably very few people who haven't seen Matt Walsh's "What Is a Woman," the documentary that he did a year or two ago. I mean, that should show people how insane the argument is as to what is a woman, when nobody dare answer what is a woman, what constitutes what is a woman, or a biological woman. That should show you how stupid the argument is. So when you're looking at the fragmentation of this, you've only got to look at saying, I keep using the word drag, and some people are probably thinking, well, why are you using the word drag in this? What's that got to do with the LGBTQI? Well, you've only got to look at, and I'll be uploading this on my channel, Drag Queen Storytime. I know it takes place in America, and I know it takes place in England. Have you heard of it, Lloyd?
Of course, yeah. Of course I have.
Of course, drag, that is men dressed up in sexually provocative clothing. For those who don't know, men who dress up in sexually provocative clothing and go into schools and libraries reading stories to toddlers and infants under the guise of diversity and inclusivity. There's the images. And this is said to be normal and nothing wrong with it.
This is clearly satanic. This is a perversion. I mean, this is a genuine perversion. And yeah, this is normalizing perversity. I mean, look at this.
And this is
what?
So where's the outrage of the atheist in this? They call people who believe in religion as brainwashed. Well, what's this? People who believe in a God are brainwashed. What on earth is this? Is this
What is
normal?
that?
But the problem. But the problem for the atheist is he can't use his periodic table to turn around and say this is wrong, because all of this comes from his worldview.
Yeah, but hold on. If atheism is a lack of, actually, I do have a presentation I've been working on exactly this, but I'll do it out of memory for the moment. But atheists claim that atheism is a lack of belief. If it is a lack of belief, it is not a knowledge. It's not a knowledge claim, because a lack of belief is just effectively an emotional state. So an emotional state holds no knowledge value. It just is. So how can they claim that atheism is then scientific, right? So this makes no coherent sense. It is not scientific. It is merely, and also, if you claim you have a lack of belief, now, for instance, you might not believe in something you don't know about. However, once the mind has been exposed to that stimulus, for instance, you didn't believe in bananas. It's the 1500s, and they've just come back from India for the first trip to India with bananas to Europe. You didn't know about bananas, so you lacked a belief. Granted, you were an atheist as far as bananas were concerned. Now you see a banana. Someone shows you a banana. Do you now lack a belief? No, you do not, because once you've been exposed to the stimuli, you now either accept it or reject it. You now don't have a neutral position of a lack. You now have chosen to either reject what you see or to accept it. So therefore, a lack of belief is only valid if you have had no knowledge and no exposure to something. But once you're exposed to it, you now have made a decision to either accept it or reject it, in which case you actively reject what you see or you actively accept what you see. So again, atheists do not follow logic. And also, if you read through the literature, the scientific literature, science barely 2-3% of it say that, look, well, this is a valid belief of atheism. No, the literature states atheism is an active set of beliefs, an active set of doctrines and philosophies. Did that make sense, Thunderous?
Absolutely makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. And just to continue on from the drag point, you and I have discussed this before about what MAPS is. I mean, before there was MAPS, there was paedophilia. But now they've softened the impacts of that word by using MAPS, and MAPS is just an abbreviation of minor attracted persons.
Actually, no, yeah. So they're trying to use MAP, which is as far as I can tell, is a minor attracted pedophile. They fixed it for them. MAP.
Yeah. So now, you really have to ask the question, because you see from there, you can see it from their point of view, because they're not suggesting that it's wrong. Because if there is no objective moral value, and there's nothing beyond the periodic table, then everything is nothing more than a chemical equation of what's acting in your physiological brain. So can you actually condemn a human being for acting out? Because in their model of Darwin atheism, and it's on my channel there's no such thing as free will. Richard Dawkins, there's 2 videos there of Richard Dawkins admitting there's no such thing as free will. It's just based with chemicals, or you subjectively invent something. I wanted to go through one of those. Maybe we can do it next time and do a
Yeah.
stop and play discussion as to how deceptive Richard Dawkins is by saying everything but answering nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll give an example of the stupidity of the arguments of the LGBTQ movement. And one person turned around and said to me, "Oh, well, yeah, but homosexuality is natural." So and I goes, "Well, what makes you think it's natural? Because it doesn't produce offspring. There's no biological reason for a human being to consume the semen of another man. There's no value in that. Also, there's no value in the ejaculation of semen into another man's anus. Well, what is the Darwinian evolution reason for any of these things?" And then they quoted sort of like certain animals that behave in a certain way. What they don't understand is animal instincts of alpha male, so on and so forth. All right. And I thought to myself, hang on a minute here. If you're going to cite nature as your defense for practices that don't produce offspring, well, what's your view on cannibalism? Because cannibalism is more prevalent than homosexuality. What's your view on rape? Because rape is more prevalent than homosexuality. Are you just going to suggest now that cannibalism and rape are normal as well? Because in your worldview, you've just cited the animal kingdom for the practice of homosexuality. Why are you then going to condemn these two? And what is your objective moral?
If I can make a point on that, Bog Katie says, isn't the correct term pederasty? Pedophilia is the attraction to minors. Pederasty is the practice when older man sort of mentors but sexually uses a teenager, so a kid above the age of about 12. So they are slightly different. They are similar, but they're not identical. So pederasty was typically what was practiced, I believe, or what was actually abhorrent within Greece. It's assumed it was, but actually it was spoken out against. But this was what some people tried to practice. So pederasty is a little bit different. So they're not quite the same, to my knowledge. And then also, if you look at atheism and you look at the survival of the fittest, right? Slavery would also be logical because we have machines to make our lives easy. And if it's the strong versus the weak, and you then, and the powerful versus the weak, right? Then it makes sense that you enslave others, because this means that your life is easier. You are more likely to survive because you are getting work done, and you can spend more time procreating or shooting pool or whatever it is, having others do the hard labor. So then slavery would be a logical extension of where atheism and Darwinism, social Darwinism, would lead.
Yeah, because there's nothing wrong. There is no right and wrong. There's no good and bad, and there's no good or evil either. There just simply is. And everything is a sum total of chemical reactions within the human being brain. That's all there is. There's nothing beyond that.
Agreed. So we've discussed this before, actually. I have in my talk on the cult of reason on atheism, and what's his name? Dawkins. I mean, this is something I have discussed in the past with Dawkins. So yeah, he doesn't believe in free will, and so there are many that also do not.
Yeah, they can't though. That's the thing, you see. The moment that they say they cite free will as a reality, then it's the paradox in the Book of Genesis, where the tree of life, not the tree of life, the tree of knowledge of good and bad, was the determination and proof of free will. It was either obedience or disobedience. Without law, the paradox is, without law there is no free will. Without free will there is no law. Free will is the demonstration of being obedient to law. If you don't have the law, then all you have is instinct. That's why God put the tree of knowledge, good, bad in the Garden of Eden. It was Adam's demonstration of his free will, whether to be obedient or to be disobedient, and he demonstrated it via free will.
And Darwin says here that not Darwin, this is Dawkins. He claims here, he states here bluntly, when I think I have free will, when I think I'm exercising free choice, I am deluding myself. My brain states are determined by physical events. He's a mechanical determinist. So he is a mechanical determinist, which means that, now it's very interesting that they claim that their beliefs are mechanically determined. Then why are they adamantly dead set against the vast majority of humans who were inclined by nature to be religious. Why are they claiming that we are the faulty ones when we are the majority and they are the ones that are the utter minority and clearly the defective ones? And if you have no control over your brain state and your beliefs, then why are they giving us grief about it? Because we have no control over that either.
Well, this goes back to what I was trying to say earlier. Well, where did the belief of God come from then? If there is no God and there is no Jesus and there is no Satan and there are no demons and there are no angels and there's nothing beyond the material, then Dawkins has to blame evolution for people to believe that are believing in God in the first place, because they wouldn't believe in a God unless evolution allowed them to believe in that concept in the first place. So where else can Dawkins believe that God came from? If God does not exist, where else did he come from? It could have only have come from evolution, because evolution produces human beings to believe God in the first place. So he's condemning evolution, the very thing he believes in.
Yeah, I know. And I mean, Vegetal asks a very good question. Why then does Dawkins blame Christians for anything if he doesn't believe they have free will? Because they are hypocrites, because their worldview is not coherent. It is not logical. It doesn't follow logic. It rejects rational logic. So it's got nothing to do with logic at all. So yeah, Thunderous, we've been going nearly 90 minutes. We should wrap up in the next 5.
Yeah, Vegetal Asbestos, do you think he decided to put that tie on that day or not? Answer me that. Do you think he made that decision? I think Dawkins has also been married 3 times. It seems strange for a guy that doesn't believe in God, right? Doesn't believe in God, yet he goes and gets married 3 times. And marriage is a religious ceremony. I mean, it originates in the Bible. It's a God-instituted arrangement. So why would a guy that doesn't believe in God go and practice 3 times with 3 different women something that God instituted in the first place? Do we not see that as being a bit hypocritical or contradictory?
I know they
And
don't.
he hasn't produced any sons, has he? He hasn't produced any male offspring. He's kind of been a failure in evolutionary terms as well, hasn't he?
Correct. But I mean, this is, I wonder, actually, I want to, so I want to show something. What's your next point? Because I'm busy looking up something while you,
Well, I think, to be honest with you, you're going to wrap up in a few minutes. What I was going to ask the audience is, you and I mentioned something last week or the week before of maybe having a live discussion show where people can contact us, ask questions on Darwinian evolution or atheism or Islam. I just thought, maybe is it worth putting it out to the audience whether they'd be interested in having that as a feature, or maybe once a fortnight,
so
once a month.
every couple of weeks or so, once a month, having just a Q&A session, just an open Q&A session. We'll let you know about it, and we'll just have a chat about things. We'll take questions, try to have answers. So I'll put up a little post on the community. And today was really just an open session, Thunderous this time. But I'll put it up and then post your questions, and we can try and tackle some of those questions and have a discussion around that. Because then also Monday I'm going to try to do a show. Hopefully I'll have some notes ready for Monday. I've got some things to talk about. And then also on Tuesday, I will be on air with Kennedy Hall, very possibly doing a live stream with Kennedy Hall at the Kennedy Report. But yeah, it looks like people are keen on a show, Thunderous, so we can definitely plan one. So maybe let's look at...
What I would like to do in the show is, particularly with people in the audience, is actually tackle Darwinian evolution, because that is where my skill set is Darwinian evolution and the arguments, thrown arguments against why Darwinian evolution is absolutely, totally, irrefutably impossible to have taken place.
Now, I've heard you do great talks with Thaddeus on that topic. That's not my strong point. I mean, I'm just getting into that now with my talks on Darwin, which I'll be doing. So yeah, the last Kennedy Hall was not live. Yeah, sorry.
And Mr. T, Thaddeus, if you're out there, I'm still waiting for a response, because Thaddeus and myself are supposed to be doing a show with reference to Khadija, and Khadija being the true source of Islam, and that's how Islam got started. Without Khadija, there is no sin, and that is the standard Islamic.
And XYZ says, can I ban Danny if he shows up for chats? I mean, look, I have no interest in Danny's opinions. If you want to ban him, please go ahead. I don't... Honestly, what does he offer that's of value to me that, I'm not interested in his story. I've rejected his story. I have my story to tell. And we're not here to entertain people who are trying to undermine us. Your job is to tell your story, to tell a better story. and not to give a platform to people who are trying to destroy you. Yep. So yeah, shall we call it? We wrap it up here, Thunderous?
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being as part of the audience this evening, and for anybody that's going to be watching it later on and making comments later on. Certainly appreciate your input, and if you've got any suggestions, then please put them in the chat and or the comments, and I'll have a look at them and respond to them.
All right. No, so thank you. Thanks very much, Thunderous, for coming on. So guys, I hope you had a good time and that you learned something. Obviously, we threw out some little tidbits here and there, so hopefully these things are helpful. The stuff on Margaret Sanger, I'll be looking deeper into that as well to give us an understanding of where Darwinism led. These are people influenced. Marx was heavily influenced by Darwinism. Hitler was heavily influenced by Darwinism, as well as the whole culture in Germany prior to him was heavily influenced by Darwinism. And it is toxic. Darwinism is a toxic ideology. Ideas have consequences, and they want to tell you it's just scientific. No, it is not scientific. It is genocidal. So that's my last thought. I'll leave the last word to you, Thunderous.
No, thank you, Lloyd, for having an opportunity to meet up with you again this Friday evening, and I thank the audience as well. And hopefully we can come together in a couple of weeks' time or something, and look at doing a live show, or with a live call-in or live questions and answers.
Excellent. We'll do that. So thank you, everyone. God bless. See you soon. Have a great weekend. Good night.